Too many of those. No, that's a beautiful area up there. It's really nice. I was surprised how heavily wooded that area is.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Lindsay, will you note the time when Jackie arrives?
Will do.
Thank you. So we'll go ahead and call to order City Council business meeting for Thursday, November 19th, 2020. It is 6:03 p.m. Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Lester?
Here.
Baker?
Here.
Reba?
Here.
Livingston? Cool.
Here.
And Mayor Tom Phillips.
I am here as well. So we do have a quorum. So this meeting of the Norwalk City Council on November 19th, 2020 is being held electronically. Governor Reynolds issued a state of public health disaster effective November 16th, 2020 that prohibits indoor gatherings of more than 15 people. I issued a proclamation of emergency effective November 9th, 2020 that closed our public buildings. So this meeting will be conducted electronically. As with all electronic meetings, there may be some technical glitches. We may talk over each other. There could be a bunch of other issues that occur during our meeting tonight. I just ask that we all be patient and respectful with each other as we conduct this meeting. For those on the Zoom meeting, you'll notice that your microphones are muted and you may not be able to unmute your mic. If you want to speak to an agenda item, please let us know when that item comes up and we'll unmute your microphone during public comment. You can let us know by raising your Zoom hand or by flagging us in the chat box. You'll also notice that you needed to be allowed into the Zoom meeting tonight. If you were disruptive, we'll give you a warning and ask you to stop. If you are still disruptive, we'll remove you from the meeting and you will not be allowed back in. This is what would happen with a full in-person meeting. So this really isn't a change to any of our procedures. We're streaming this meeting through YouTube. We believe YouTube provides the ability for a much broader audience to view our meetings. You'll find the ability to comment to the YouTube meeting has been turned off. This is done so we don't have a meeting going on within a meeting. We're recording this meeting, so please act accordingly. Finally, I'm only human. I may miss recognizing someone. If that happens, please interrupt me via the chat box. I will not be offended at all if you do. Our next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please rise with me. And what do I say? Try to steer my screen here and try this thing. So if you please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I think I need a longer video for that. Okay, let me get back to where I was. So item 3 is approval of the agenda. We're going to pull item 8G from the agenda tonight due to last minute details that need to be worked out before presenting to council. Would anybody like to move any of the other consent agenda items to the regular agenda? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
Motion.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same. Motion carries. Item 4, we're going to have a dedicated work session. So this is a dedicated work session for mayor and city council. This work session is expected to last 1 hour. If we are done earlier, we will move right into the normal council meeting. So our topic tonight is mixed density LMI residential project. I'm going to let Luke Paris guide us through this discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. Luke Nelson will also be on to jump in whenever he feels the need to, so feel free to interrupt me and ask questions as well. What we wanted to talk about tonight in the work session was the idea of doing some kind of LMI, low moderate income housing project in the style of the Peninsula District, which is the neighborhood that we went and took a tour of last year. We recently had some questions about, hey, what are we doing with that? Are we gonna revisit that topic? and what would that look like? And so that's kind of led us to have this work session discussion. To Before we jump too much into this, just to maybe hit a little bit on like what have we done with this already. We did the Peninsula District tour. This idea of new urbanism is kind of what you would term the Peninsula District to be. That style of development, or a traditional neighborhood development is another term that they use for that. And a lot of those the features of those types of neighborhoods, those are things that we as staff had talked a lot with developers over the years about, how can we do some of that? Just trying to see, is a developer willing to propose something like that? And so far, that's not been the case. And I think if you study the Peninsula District itself, you'll understand that, it's not usually a market decision that makes these types of projects happen. There's usually a decent amount of city or government assistance in helping those happen. So that's where those LMI dollars might come in. So again, new urbanism, it's kind of, or traditional neighborhood development, it's a development style. It's different regulations that you'd put into place to get a specific neighborhood style to be more walkable, and really to be a mix of densities and a mix of housing types. Within the idea of new urbanism, you can also include this idea of inclusionary housing. Inclusionary housing is a type of zoning sometimes, or just a kind of philosophy that within a certain residential area, there is a set aside of a certain number of units that would meet a low to moderate income housing threshold. So you might say, hey, if you're developing in this area, you have to have 15% of your units, housing units, have to be for low to moderate income. Some places just regulate that. I mean, if you're going to develop a new neighborhood in some states, in some cities, you just have to do that. Iowa, I'm not aware of any place in Iowa that does that from a regulatory standpoint. So it's more of, how can we incentivize that through saying, we'll provide you incentives. And then if you want those incentives, you have to provide X percentage of housing. And the other idea there, that the Peninsula neighborhood, and Luke, if you want to hop over to the map, in addition to inclusionary housing, there's also this idea of integrated housing. So that's that mixed density component of kind of the title that we talked about here. So this is just a map of the Peninsula neighborhood that I crudely colored on top of, just to kind of help illustrate how the mix of density occurs throughout that neighborhood. The yellow there is just your traditional single family homes. The orange is townhomes. So you can see how they're kind of pockets of townhomes spread around that. And then the purple are apartments. So they're kind of, flagged off to one side or kind of adjacent to some things. So it all kind of works together to form a kind of a neighborhood. And then the center there, that green, is a common green space square area with a small commercial building as well. And so an important thing to remember, especially at the level of what the Peninsula District is that this type of thing can happen on all different scales. In this instance, there's some commercial in there that when we went and toured that, I think they were pretty honest about the difficulty of getting commercial to be in that space. It's a one building that's in the middle of this. There's nothing else around it really. So it's going to be some kind of commercial that's going to serve the people there. There's not going to be any more traffic that's going to come to there. So it's a difficult spot to get done. So really what you're looking at more here is, and what we're talking about is more a residential focused new urbanist development, that maybe we can find a location for that would be close to some commercial to help play off of some of that, but probably wouldn't have a commercial component in it of itself.
Luke, hey, I wanted to add that, and this map really shows it well. And for the council members and the P&Z members that went with us, remember there was kind of one way into this development, and it's kind of off the beaten path. I don't think that helped the commercial component either.
Exactly. This is, it's kind of an isolated little thing. It's a neat neighborhood when you get there, but it's not connected real well to anything, if you contrast that up to the Prairie Trail area, Prairie Trail, you know, it's connected a little bit better over to the district at Prairie Trail, though State Street provides a kind of big barrier between the residential and the commercial. So all these different things have different components that make them more or less successful. Really what it comes down to is the design of a place is really what makes it a new urbanist development, and kind of how things are distributed throughout, not so much, you know, what's there or the uses within. So if you want to hop to the next one, really what we've learned from the Peninsula District is, and what we've learned through talking with developers and things, is that, you know, there's not a whole lot of desire out there right now to handle something like this from just somebody thinks it's a good idea and they want to go do it. Prairie Trail up in Ankeny was maybe the lone exception to that, where somebody that owned that ground saw that vision and wanted to do it. But for the most part, that style of development's not something that's just sought after. So if you want to, if we as a city want to pursue something like that, then we're looking at, what kind of financial commitment from the city are we going to put into this? Would we look at doing incentives? Would we look at buying some ground somewhere and using that as an incentive? Are we more active in pursuing that and more active in saying this is something that's going to happen? We're going to identify the area and take a more active approach using city dollars for that. All of those things can be different things that we can do to help drive that. Using, again, the Peninsula neighborhood as that example, you recall when we had that presentation from them, it very much was a city-driven project. They had the land, they were able to use the land as an incentive to help it develop. And even at that point, and all the cards falling into a row, that was a long project that was difficult and took a lot of time and effort to get it to where it's at. So that's really kind of the crux of it from the city standpoint is, you know, what do we want to put into it? And are we willing to do that? Because if we, again, getting back to the developer side of things, most of our developers in town are developing lots that then they're going to put on the market and try to sell to a home builder or an individual to build a house. And so I think understandably, they're trying to provide the maximum amount of flexibility they can when they're marketing that to somebody out there. New urbanist developments tend to put a lot of restrictions on how something's designed. So now, you know, you can't just bring any builder to a lot in a new urbanist development usually, because they don't have house styles that fit with that. So that can be a tricky sticking point if we are wanting to rely solely on the market of things.
A lot of what we see with developers are larger chunks of land that are all one type of density, or larger swaths of one type of density. In this scenario, like you saw on that other map, this is literally taking different types of density and putting them in the same block, where developers, what typically works for them and where they can turn over land the quickest is when they have more all types of housing of all one type in large banks of land.
Yeah, and we didn't put, you know, we didn't put any maps of existing Norwalk on there, but you can think of most of our latest neighborhood developments. The legacy, you know, it has its residential areas, it has its apartment ground, it has its townhomes, and in certain instances they are kind of interfacing with each other, especially with the stuff up along Lexington and Baleo Phillips Park. But then you look down at like the Orchard View neighborhood, you've got two townhome complexes within that, and they're very much just they're standalone little pods of townhomes. And so from a developer perspective, again, I get it. I think it makes sense. Like, you know, they're able to section that piece off and say, here's 10 acres for townhomes, and I can either develop that out as townhomes myself, or I can sell it off to somebody else that's going to develop those townhomes. And it makes sense. Whereas if you spread all of those throughout the development, you're just introducing more uncertainty and more headaches on their side from what, you know, their traditional businesses. So really,
Luke, part of the point of what you're bringing up even on this slide is trying to identify that the incentives that likely, if we're going to pull a developer along, if we're going to invite them along and have them join us in this venture, likely it's going to take a significant incentive. And does that mean the purchase of land by the city? Are we involved in the actual land purchase, or do we use some other incentive dollars to make that happen? And then Luke, I remember the last one, we spent a lot of time talking about that, where that's really kind of the biggest commitment from council, is identifying who wants to be in the driver's seat on the project.
Yeah. So on the last kind of, I guess, bullet point or the target there, there's really two schools of thoughts there. I guess you want to hop to the next one where we're talking a little bit about location. It kind of hits on that. From a city perspective, if we take the lead, we get more control. I mean, that's really what it's about. We can determine what we think's the best location for it to be successful. We get more control over the timing and a lot of the style of what we want. However, it might take longer. It might be something that we have to really have a long-term approach to how it's going to happen. The flip side is you let a developer take most of the lead on it. They're going to make those decisions based on what they find the market demand needs to be. They're probably going to turn stuff around a little bit quicker, but we're probably also going to have to negotiate a little bit more on what that development style might look like. Again, we've tried to work with some of our developers on introducing some of these ideas to different developments to varying degrees of success. The Hughes Century Crossing single family area, when we did that PUD, we introduced some things trying to get some more walkable development in there, trying to reduce the amount of driveway cuts and how wide things are, trying to have street trees along things. And so we were able to do some of that, but it's maybe 50% of the way there. As far as introducing some of these concepts and getting something that would be like the Peninsula District in Norwalk. So, the more active role the city takes, I think the more likely you're going to be able to get what you want out of it, which I think makes some sense. Just to hit on what some of the keys to success would be with this, again, that Peninsula District, it's a good example, but it's also important to understand that it was born out of a set of circumstances that were probably ideal for this type of thing to happen. The city, again, owned the ground. They were able to identify a developer that was wanting to do something like that and had some things happen that caused them to change focus on where they were looking at, and it just happened to work out. So that worked really well for them. And even with that, it took a long time for that to happen. It was 10 plus years to get that fully realized. Working with and determining, if we want to provide more flexibility to developers, or if we really want this to be something and the city wants to have that vision, do we take more of that active driver's seat and lead it? And then just some aspects of what that development style would look like. Again, these are all things we saw in the Peninsula District. This is walkable with lots of good sidewalks, good street frontage. There weren't a lot of driveways cutting into things. The Peninsula connected, that second bullet point, is probably one of the things you could knock the Peninsula District on. It's not real well connected to everything. There's just that one way in and out. They have connected it with some trails, so there's some biking and pedestrian things you can do in and out of that neighborhood, but it's not the most connected to everything. It does have a mix of housing styles, again, not just townhomes to apartments to single family, but even just size and shape of single family homes. There's a lot of different smaller single family homes to bigger ones in that neighborhood. And then that integrated housing, again, that idea of that mix of densities, narrower streets, trying to make things, again, more walkable, more pedestrian friendly by slowing down traffic on narrower streets, having on-street parking and those types of things, making them alley loaded so that your driveways, again, they're not breaking the sidewalk out in front of things. That front public right of way is so important to a walkable area that really getting somebody to buy into alley loading a development is one of the key things you can do for that, to help make your buildings really think front oriented is really what you're trying to do with that. So
And that point of integrated housing, one of the reasons that a development like this that we're looking at for Norwalk, the integrated involves some level of that workforce housing. We've talked about how we've discussed these different proposals that have come forward of an apartment complex that is for affordable housing or LMI housing. And we've all expressed concern with that. We know that we need a balance of all different types of housing styles, sale price, and people that occupy homes. Different, it's our labor pool that helps bring companies like Michael Foods here. Our big concern has really been, we don't want just large blocks of housing. We tend to get the most uproar from citizens when we say, all right, we're going to do this large apartment complex. And then you start talking about that as workforce housing. People tend to be fearful of that. We've said that integrating that type of housing, truly integrating it into a neighborhood is how we believe it can be successful. So that is such a key part of this, and likely using our LMI funds to help incentivize and integrate that housing is going to be critical. If you remember, when we heard from those folks about the Peninsula neighborhood, the people that were doing the presentation, they said there was some fear and apprehension if it was going to get off the ground. Some of their first housing that was built was that LMI housing. But again, just as Luke said, that project took off and it was successful if it's done the right way.
The other thing to add with that kind of integrated housing and inclusionary housing thing is just, I don't think it's just, our staff opinion that says that that's a good way to do affordable housing. There's a lot of case studies. There's a lot of data out there that says you can offset a lot of the negatives of low and moderate income housing and a lot of the perceived negatives and real negatives by interspersing it throughout a neighborhood. So if you just classically look at the public housing that was done in the 60s and 70s and, creating these giant apartment complexes of low moderate income housing, it's pretty clear the issues that were had with that, and I don't think we're talking anything on the scale of that for any kind of development in Norwalk, but that's a poster child for how not to do it. And certainly the studies that are out there on how to provide good affordable housing and good low to moderate income housing for folks is by integrating it into a neighborhood. So I guess that just leads us to the question of, is this something that we are really interested in pursuing? We've got some ideas on how we could try to move forward through forming maybe a committee to take a look at it and draft some concepts on what it might be for council to consider further. It's just a matter of, do we want to do that or not? And I see Jackie just typed go in the chat there. So that's one data point.
Yes, and that's really what we're looking for. I mean, at this point, we'd really love to hear feedback from the elected officials. Thank you, Jackie. Are there other thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to see us move forward. And maybe the best thing to do would be to have a study committee, because, the LMI dollars are available for us to use. But the question in my mind is, what way would we get the most bang for our bucks? How best to use those dollars to try to be able to do something like this. Are we ahead of the game to do some kind of a land purchase and say, okay, it's going to be here? Or are we ahead of the game to piggyback on a developer and say, hey, if you're willing to do these things, here's some money. Which way would we be ahead of the game? And maybe that's one of the things to be studied a little bit or looked at and weighed.
Yeah, I'd agree with. I definitely think so. I think part of that committee work and looking at concepts would be trying to identify, what opportunities exist out there right now. Because if the desire is to move forward, then the desire is to try to do something, which, part of that's going to be finding the right place to do it and what opportunities exist right now to try to start making that happen.
Yeah, that's right. I wouldn't be as fearful myself about how long a duration something might take to built out. I mean, that would be my number one fear. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I'd like to see us look into this, move a little further.
Hey.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Luke.
Well, I was just going to comment on a chat, but go ahead and first I'll come to that after.
Okay, I missed the chat. I would like to go forward and continue to investigate this. My preference would be that we'd explore ways to incentivize. Obviously, the ways that we've had so far haven't worked. So I'd like to look at the incentives. I would like to, I think it'd be a good idea to have some members of the development community on the committee to provide some feedback for that. I personally don't have any interest in supporting a city purchase of land. I think it's a poor use of taxpayer dollars to invest that money on a project that could take, I don't know, 20 years to come to fruition. What if we can't get it working? Then we just have all that money sitting out there that we could perhaps use for something else today. It just doesn't make sense. And I know we'd have to go through an RFP process to pick developers, but what if we can't find any developers? Then how do you pick one? How do you be fair? It just opens a huge can of worms. So I think the incentive route would be the easiest way to do it, and to me, the most palatable way to do it.
The chat message that came through, Councilmember Lester talked about other sources of funds. And I would absolutely think that there are other options or other funding sources out there for this type of a unique project. And you bet going after grant funds is going to be a key part of the project.
Yeah. So
Any other
go ahead.
comments, thoughts?
I can, I can see both sides of this pretty clearly. What Stephanie said, I agree with, as far as if there's a way to use grant and incentives and stuff. The minute you start buying the land, you've got other developers that own land immediately declaring that you're not going to play up and up, and you're going to show your land or deals first, and we're trying to compete with you guys, and you have endless dollars. You can hear all this a mile away. The other side, though, there's got to be some impetus to get it rolling. I don't know if I think the land is just a little more risk than what I would be willing to buy in on. That is a big, big step, and a very expensive step that you can no longer step away from. We've talked about avoiding risk in the past with the North Shore being developed. We've kind of chosen not to take the developer's risk. There's a big payoff and a big risk. And I think there's a reason we've stayed away from that.
I wonder if we could maybe explore something kind of in between there. If there might be an opportunity to explore to see if any developers might be interested in participating in this that currently own property, that, if we had certain incentives, they might agree to certain stipulations that would maybe still get us some of what we want as far as control over what's going in there.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. That's good.
So I'm hearing that people want to establish a committee of some sort. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'd say so.
So who wants to be on it?
No, I'd like to be on it. That'd be fun.
If we had one more, that would be great. So we've got Ed.
Me.
Jackie?
Yep.
All right.
All right. Well, Luke Paris and I have been having several discussions about representation, and it was good to hear somebody else comment that maybe it'd be good to have somebody from the development community on the committee. We had talked about that as well. So we'll start to go through a list. Of course, having too big of a committee makes things difficult, but we'll see if we can get at least a narrow group put together and pull you folks in and see if we can't just work on taking those next steps, flesh out a committee, and then start to look at a draft concept that matches some of these initial thoughts that we're hearing from everybody, and go from there.
Sounds great.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Paris, did I miss anything? Is there anything
Nope,
else?
I think you hit on it. Well, I think our next step is to, like you said, do some thinking around about other folks that can be involved in that and try and get a 5 to 7 person group, not too big, like you said, pulled together where we can start tossing ideas around.
Yeah.
And Luke, I mean, I did a little bit of work on this with the MAC group when I was on there, and there was already a subgroup that was formed. And Capital Crossroads representative was part of that. So you might want to touch base with, is that Jackie or Tom? See if that subcommittee has accomplished anything. You know, maybe they can give you some help in thinking through scenarios.
And that was, you said the MAC?
That was MAC.
Okay. Yep, we will reach out. It's a good idea.
What about a P&Z member?
Definitely.
Yes, yeah.
That's a good idea.
We will we'll reach out to them and see if anyone's interested as well.
Excellent.
Only if they're interested in it.
And Paris, you did bring this up. I mean, you've already had some discussions with us even before this came to council to get feedback from P&Z.
Yeah, you know, again, this idea is something from a staff level. I think I've been supportive of this type of thing since I started with the city, since, you know, previous work I've done. And so, you know, we've always kind of been just plugging along at different times, you know, trying to get people to understand some of these ideas and having discussions. And so, you know, at various points throughout the my tenure here, we've had discussions at P&Z with those folks, and there's always been a kind of head nods of, yep, everybody's always kind of liked that idea of that. But we've sent so far, again, like the only thing we've done from a staff level is try to talk with our developers about, hey, how can we do some of this stuff? And I think understandably, you know, there's some hesitancy there from their groups, and you know, so this would be a next step to move that forward.
Great.
Thank you, everybody.
Anything else?
Not me.
Okay. So we will move on. Item 5 is welcome guests and public comment. For those on the line, thank you for being with us tonight. We appreciate you viewing our council meeting, and those on YouTube, same thing. Thank you for being with us. We will open it up for public comment. These are for non-agenda items. We'll give you a 3-minute time limit, and we can't take action on these tonight since they're not on the agenda. Also, if you'd like to comment on any item in the consent agenda, now would be the time. So you should be able to, if you want to, unmute your microphone and address council and myself if you would like to. Seeing none and hearing nobody, we will move on. Item 6 is presentations. We actually don't have any tonight, so we'll move on past that to our consent agenda. On the consent agenda, we have approval of the November 5th, 2020 minutes of the regular city council meeting. Expenditures, we have tax abatements. We have a renewal special class C liquor license with outdoor service and Sunday sales for Pyro Pizzeria for December 1st, 2020 through November 30th, 2021. We have an approval of the fiscal year 22 tax increment financing certification. We have approval of the fiscal year 20 annual financial report. We have a resolution setting the schedule and location of Norwalk City Council meetings for 2021. We have a resolution officially naming publications for the city of Norwalk for 2021. We have a resolution approving pay estimate number 2 to Elder Corporation for the Mackinac Sports Complex East Parking Lot Improvements Project. And we have monthly reports. Can I get a motion?
Can I ask one question?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Sure.
On 7G, the schedule for meetings, we're skipping the second one in March again because of spring break. Is that something I didn't pull it because I didn't think we were going to change it, but I'm just asking if that's something that going forward we need to really Do we need 2 meetings in March somehow? I'm just kind of asking.
We've skipped it every year since I've been on council. I'm not saying your comment isn't a worthy question. I'm just saying what's last
No,
7 years.
That's why it wasn't on there. I'm the one that created the calendar. It's just been that way. That's something I didn't ask. It's just been that way ever since I've been with the city.
And I'm fine with the way it is. Mine is more think about it for next year, that maybe instead of skipping, I just think that we're growing to be a large enough city that it's hard to go a month in between meetings sometimes.
That's fair. We can also, the week after spring break, we can have a meeting on that Thursday or even Monday or Tuesday for a special meeting if needed. So
Mhm.
Yeah, no, if we need a special meeting, I understand that, but I'm just thinking going forward, setting the schedule, we might want to talk about that one day or that one time in the month, whether we want to move it or not. So
yeah, that's fair, I think.
Mayor, I'd
Considering-
also,
You're right. We're growing. Go ahead, Luke.
I'd also just make a note that in the past, part of our struggle has been we see a lot of vacations, people gone. I will say that with Zoom, we certainly have a lot more flexibility to continue participation, even if people are traveling.
Right. Okay. So can I get a motion?
Motion?
second,
All right. Got a motion and a second. Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba,
Yes.
and Cool.
Yes.
All right, that motion carries. Item 8 is old and new business for consideration, discussion, and possible action. Item 8A is a public hearing regarding an ordinance to allow zoning for infill planned unit developments in the city of Norwalk. So we'll open up public hearing at 6:39 p.m. Luke, Luke Paris, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Mayor. This PUD, infill PUD ordinance, it comes from the discussion we had a couple months ago about the potential need to provide some flexibility for redevelopment of areas that are basically sub 10 acres in size, that we might see some proposals on, but don't fit real strictly with what the zoning might say, from like a strict R1 or R2 or R3 type standpoint. And so we might like to have some flexibility of a PUD, but our current ordinances don't let us do that because a PUD has to be a minimum of 10 acres or larger. So this infill PUD chapter would be added to the zoning ordinance, and would give us the ability to look at things that were under 10 acres and consider them for some unique regulations and criteria to let development happen in some of our infill areas that make sense for the context of the neighborhood. But we need to maybe relax some setbacks or something, or we need to do some trade-offs for some things to let development happen. The specific area that this kind of rose out of was the area across from the library. There was an older yellow house there and about, I think, 2 acres of property there that someone was looking at doing a couple duplexes on. Seemed to fit really well with the development or the neighborhood. However, the setbacks, and because it was old lots that were developed back at the founding of the city, made it challenging. And so we felt like that instance, and then just looking at the potential for redevelopment on the diagonal on Highway 28 through town from a commercial standpoint, there's just probably a lot of areas that could stand to benefit from this type of infill PUD and providing some of that flexibility if someone would wish to propose something there. A couple of notable elements of what this infill PUD language would talk about would be that we'd say there would be no more than 2 land uses in one of these. So really understanding that, like, we're talking things 10 acres and less, that's a small area. We don't want to open up the doors to all kinds of different land uses that could happen in that. So we really want to try and focus them on just a maximum of 2 land uses. Again, up to 10 acres. So we're allowing some of those smaller uses. When we look at our comp plan, this idea of allowing duplexes or multifamily uses in low density, the idea there is that when you have a already developed area. A lot of times you just kind of apply a blanket swath of land use in your future land use plan over top of that. So you might have a pretty large area like the Founders District that's all called low density residential. Well, rather than having to carve out and do like a very small change to your future land use plan, the idea here would be that, you know, there's some flexibility to jump up a little bit in density in those areas so that you're not doing these spot looks at small changes to your future land use plan. And then just the submission requirements in the form of what they would look like, we would keep that similar to what our current PUDs are. So really what we did with this ordinance, when you read through it, is we took our current PUD ordinance and we just modified it and made some tweaks here and there. So for the most part, the form of it and the things that would be required to be submitted would be what our current PUD requirements would be. We, from a staff perspective, would recommend approval of it. We think it would be really helpful in our ability to help provide flexibility in doing redevelopment in town and bringing additional value to some of these maybe underutilized lots and really helping, you know, bring things to the community. We did review it through Planning and Zoning Commission. They also recommended approval of the ordinance. So be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Luke? Lindsay, did we receive any oral or written comments on this item?
We have not.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and allow folks to unmute their microphones. The folks on the Zoom meeting should be able to unmute their mics. Is there any public comment on this item? Or use your chat box. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public hearing at 6:44 p.m.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All right. We have a motion and a second to approve first reading of an ordinance to allow zoning for infill plan unit developments in the city of Norwalk. Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
All right, that motion carries. Item C is a public hearing regarding water usage charges. We will go ahead and open up the public hearing at 6:45 p.m. I'd like to note that I have asked staff to do further research on our irrigation and peak usage. Our high summer usage is having a significant impact on our rates, and I would like to do a deeper dive on that. The rates discussed tonight is not going to include that research, but we'll be back with more information. Jean Kelly, I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Utility rate increases are generally reviewed and implemented on a fiscal year basis, but due to COVID this year, we decided to delay those increases for 6 months. The last few weeks to a month, city manager, public works director, myself, and PFM have done a substantial amount of time, put a substantial amount of time into digging into the water and sewer financials, really trying to nail down CIP, improvements, and O&M cost. So we're not putting pressure on rates just for like placeholder projects. We're really trying to nail that down. So upon our review, tonight we are just recommending a 4% water rate increase to be implemented January 1, 2021. The rate would go from $6.48 per thousand to $6.74 per thousand. We are also recommending the water availability rate go from $5 to $5.50. This has not been increased in quite some time. The average bill, which is about 5,000 gallons used per month, would increase about $1.81. So this 4% would be $1.81 on average. The large user rate would go from $3.49 to $3.63. And we have two users, which is Michael Foods and Lafredo, that fall in that category at this time. There are two main reasons for this requested increase. One is Des Moines Waterworks costs. They had an outside firm perform a cost of service study and they determined that they were not charging enough to wholesale purchase users. Norwalk falls under that class. This results in a 15% increase, April 1 of 2021. In addition, 2020 was a really dry year for us, and Norwalk exceeded its daily capacity of 1.965 million gallons per day on 5 separate occasions. I did list those dates and amounts in the agenda statement for you to take a look at. So due to this, the city will have to pay a blended rate or a penalty rate, if you will. This results in another 12% increase. And as the mayor mentioned, we do believe that irrigation probably is a significant factor, and we really are trying to get the details on that and maybe come back to you with a potential for an irrigation increase. The second reason is our CIP needs in the water department. Mainly, the new water tower is something that we've been talking about for some time. We'd had a hydraulic study done a few years back from McClure Engineering, and they put anywhere from $3 to $6 million for a 1 million gallon tank or a 2 million gallon tank. We have decided to adjust that to just a 1 million gallon tank. Again, when we dug into the study and decided that 2 million gallons might be needed 25 or 30 years from now, based on population estimates. We weren't real comfortable charging current people for something that might be 3 decades away. So we adjusted that down to 1 million gallon tank. We recently issued $5.7 million for a Western water feeder for phases 1 through 5. We believe this has allowed us to put the tower out a few years longer than we had it originally. But we don't yet know the impact or how much longer we will be able to put that off. So those are the main reasons. The sewer and stormwater funds are in a very strong positions with fewer capital needs at the moment. We'll continue to review that, especially with the budget season coming up. So due to the strong liquidity position of those funds, staff is not recommending a mid-year increase at this time. We'll review again for July 1, 2021, as well as the irrigation information. With that, if Luke or Wayne want to add anything, or I would entertain questions if you have any.
I've got one. So if we implement this rate tonight increase, or the first reading of it at least, are we going to be looking at doing this again for July 1 as well? So our folks are going to have water and sewer rates possibly going up in July as well?
You know what? I will be able to answer that better after this budget season. If we keep the projects that we have in place and we continue to keep the Founders District as a main priority, then I would say yes, we will be back in July for another increase.
I'd much rather see us doing it once rather than twice in a 6-month time frame to people.
I would very much applaud the idea of adding an extra variable fee for irrigation, large residential users. I think basically that's the cause of our surcharges from Des Moines. I would like to see something on that.
Okay.
I agree with Baker, Councilmember Baker on that one. And that might be a key to some of this stuff. On the other hand, just a point of discussion with David, I wonder how, because you'd have to guesstimate what the next rate hike ought to be. And, I don't know how accurate we could be on a guesstimation. And I think we can justify what we're looking at now because we can point at things and say, here it is, this is the way it is. But on the rest of it, it would more be speculation, I think, on our part to try to look further because there's some things out there yet, left to be decided.
And we do know for certain that Des Moines Waterworks is increasing our rates. They will increase our rates, and it's going to be about 24%. So instead of that, I think 4%. I think it allows us not to come back with a 12% at some point. I think these smaller increases, I guess, based on your philosophy, if you just would rather do it once, is at a higher rate. But I do know Des Moines Waterworks is going up April 1st.
Right.
I guess I'd be in favor of the incremental approach like they've proposed, and it's too bad we have to do that. I know we all regret it, but I don't know if there's any way around it.
I'd rather do the incremental approach too, because I mean, it's hard enough for people to pay their water bills now, and just, anything we can do to kind of put off a huge increase, even if it's just 6 months, I think would help people.
Well, and don't forget, we have delayed this rate increase for 6 months right now.
I know.
So,
Good point.
okay, any other questions for Jean? Lindsay, have we received any written or oral comments on this?
We haven't, no.
All right, thank you. Do we have any public comment? People on the Zoom meeting should be able to unmute your mics if you have a public comment. Or put something in the chat box. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and close public hearing at 6:54 p.m. Item 8D is first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 177 rates and fees of the Norwalk Municipal Code, providing for amended water usage charges. So we just had a public hearing on this item. Jean, do you have anything else to add?
I do not. Thank you.
Hey, any discussion or questions from council? Any other public comment? Can I get a motion?
I'll motion that.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester.
No.
Okay, motion carries. Item 8E is a resolution officially naming depositories for the city of Norwalk for 2021. Each year we need to officially name who the city of Norwalk is going to bank with. We're keeping with the same depositories that we've had in the past: City State Bank, True Bank, and IPAIT. We're also adjusting the limit for City State Bank because we're growing. We're starting to deal with amounts greater than we have in the past, so we just need to make that adjustment. Jean or Lindsay, anything else to add?
No, I think you covered it.
Nope.
All right. Any discussion or questions from council?
Was there any discussion about adding Luena?
We haven't had that discussion yet, but it has occurred to me that maybe we could do that as a finance discussion, committee discussion.
We could. That makes sense. I was just curious if anyone had talked about it.
We haven't yet.
I think we should explore it. It seems fair.
I agree.
All right. Do we have any public comment or any other comments or questions from council? All right. Hearing none. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester.
Oh, I'm not in this discussion. Sorry.
I'm sorry, you're abstaining.
Yeah.
Baker.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 8F is a resolution approving an extension of the approval of the preliminary plat of the Vale at Echo Valley. So this is a plat that was approved by council in 2019. Developer would just like to extend that approval date. Luke Paris, anything else to add?
No, nothing to add. No changes to this. It's the same thing we approved back in 2019. These prelim plats have a 2-year timeline on them for them to do actual work on it. So since they've not done any work, that's why they're requesting the extension.
Luke, I was just wondering, is there a reason why nothing's happened? I mean, didn't they do some work there, sewer work there or something, water lines?
Yeah, they've done a little bit of minor sewer work in that area, but they've not done any like actual installation of any of the because that work was more related to the main that runs, the sewer main that runs along there on the south side. So there's not been any actual work on the subdivision itself. I don't have an answer to why they've not done anything with it. I know I think they had a developer that was interested in it at one point, and United Properties has decided, I think they're going to try and do it themselves, or they're holding on to it, but they like the plan that's in place. So that's what we've got.
I will tell you that discussions with Michael Capola, he had expressed that to him, because ultimately it would be their project moving it forward. I think they had worked with Vista at one point in time, but I believe it's more Capola that's talking about moving the development forward. And he's really gone on lockdown because of COVID. And he expressed to me that that is a factor for him.
Any other questions?
One quick question. So is it a 2-year extension from May 19th or a 2-year extension from today?
It would be 2 years from today. It would be like we were approving it again. So
Okay.
it resets that 2-year.
That was, I just wanted to clarify that side of it. So thank you.
Good question. Do we have any public comment? Back in the chat box, not hearing anything. Can I get a motion?
Second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Item 8H is a resolution to approve the final pay estimate and certificate of completion to Kingston Services LLC for Warrior Park infrastructure improvements. So this is the final pay estimate for the company that worked on Warrior Park. There are still repairs left to be done at the park. So I wanted to make sure we discussed this item so you were aware of how we're going to get the park repair paid for after we make this final payment to Kingston. Robin, I'll let you take it from here.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, members of council. Robin Leeper, Park and Recreation Director. So Warrior Park was completed in November of 2018. And in August of 2019, as the mayor said, we noticed that the challenge course was holding water. And as a result, some of the subbase was washing away, which was causing the rubberized surface to sink. Since that time, we have had multiple meetings and conversations with myself, Jim Doherty, our engineer, Veenstra and Kim, Cunningham Recreation, which is, I guess, the umbrella company for the playground equipment and installation of that equipment. And then also Kingston Services, which is the general contractor for the project. That discussion led to, I guess, how we're going to do the repair. And I guess just in an agreement between all of us as to how the repair is going to be done and who is going to pay for that. And what we have come up with, Cunningham Recreation is going to do those repairs. Their estimate has been $20,000. They're going to provide 10,000 of the 20. Our engineer will be providing 5,000, and Kingston has agreed to provide the other 5. So that is where we're making up the money to do these repairs. So that should not cost the city anything for for the to repair the damage there. Currently, the city is withholding the retainage for Kingston still, because we haven't closed out the project. So from that retainage, we are keeping $5,000 that they have agreed to. And so the final closeout amount will be $7,993.57. I guess I can let you guys ask questions.
Yeah, what questions do you guys have?
I guess I'm trying to understand how we got in this situation.
If I could, Jackie.
Yeah,
Basically, what happened was I was brought into this when we found out that the construction on the far west playground area wasn't necessarily satisfactory. There's a lot of sinking. If you've been down on there and actually looked at it, the east playground is nice and flat, good as well as poured rubber surfaces. And on the west side, it was quite apparent that there was a lot of settling going on, and there was air spaces under the rubber, and it was starting to rip and have dents, and it was almost not safe for the kids to run. As a result, we got involved with it. The parties that were involved with the construction, as expected, they're all kind of pointing the fingers here and there on whose fault it was. And the city kind of took the approach that we don't know whose fault it is, but it needs to be fixed or else we're all going to be in court. It basically got down to that discussion. And so someone came through and said, well, we'll do it for $20,000. And basically we just had parties kicking in until we had enough money, and the city wasn't pulling money out of their pocket to get it fixed.
but I guess what I don't understand is, I mean, how did we get to the point where this happened? Was it a failure on the part of the engineering? Was it a failure on the part of the construction? Was it just completely unforeseen? I mean, that's what I'm trying.
Yep.
I understand how things transpired, but how did we get to where it had to start to transpire?
Well, I think there were several different cooks cooking this, and it was a construction project that was pretty much run by Nancy. And I think it was more or less, we had certain individuals hired for certain areas, and there just, I don't think there was either good communication or planning between them or coordination. And when you have one company come in and create a base, and then another company dig into that base to pour cement, and I just think it was whether it's lack of coordination or communication between the different subs, somehow it ended up sinking. And there was a drainage issue on it, I believe. And once it was all covered up, you definitely had different subs pointing their fingers saying, well, we dug the hole right, or the hole, other people saying it wasn't dug right. And
right. And just so I understand, is this not something that our engineers could have or should have observed? There wasn't inspections at the right time. I mean, I'm just trying to understand mostly so we can learn from the future.
Mm-hmm. I think for one thing, it was the management of it was brought on by the city, and the engineering contracts didn't necessarily hire engineers specifically for this project. So the engineer's contract was hired for other areas.
Right, but don't we have engineers? That's what I guess part of my question is, did our engineers, and maybe Tony can answer this better, I thought our engineers were involved in inspection and evaluation of the project. And again, I might misunderstand, or perhaps by the time they were there, it was not obvious. I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I could. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I think that the one thing that's not clear in all this is there was two separate contracts going on kind of at the same time for this park. So the work that Kingston did was the project that Veinster and Kim designed. We designed the infrastructure improvements for the park, which was the parking lot, the the trail system that goes through there, the concrete pad for the shelter and the grading and seeding and those elements. Then at the same time, concurrently, the city contracted directly with Cunningham Recreation to complete the play areas, the sub base for the play areas, the surfacing, the play installation of the play equipment, etc. So one of the things that we tried to do is keep these contracts. So the city didn't have an engineer doing any observation or inspection of the Cunningham Recreation contract itself. But we had a separate contract going on in the same area. And one of the things that we tried to do was keep those two projects separate. I mean, anytime we have overlapping work with contractors, you know, we can certainly run into this situation. We see it all the time when we have failures on our infrastructure on public improvement projects. You know, for example, a piece of pavement settled and the paving contractors blaming the utility contractor that put a storm sewer in underneath that, and the utility contractor is blaming the contractor that did the sub-base work, and then the paving contractor sitting there. Yeah,
I thought that was one of the things that we were trying, and again, this might post date when this issue arose, but I thought that was one of the things we were trying to resolve by having our own contractor, that we would have a contractor that would oversee the projects in general so that we could stop having these types of issues. And maybe I misunderstand.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can answer that, other than that this is something the city, you know, at that time, the city hired for Cunningham Recreation directly for that. So there wasn't anybody managing their work. I'm not sure what they had for design information or specific.
Okay, so is there somebody from city staff who can answer, have we corrected that situation? Am I wrong when I think that one of the things that we have tried to start doing in the last couple of years is having our city engineer oversee these projects so we don't have issues like this?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess from my opinion, I mean, absolutely. I think it's certainly, I mean, it was a few years back and it was certainly a learning experience. And I think it's something that we want to certainly try to avoid in the future,
Okay,
whether that's, I mean, this project wasn't, I don't know that portion of the project went through the construction bidding procedures that, you know.
No, I understand all that, Tony, which is why now I'm kind of shifting, asking city staff.
Sure.
Have we moved now? Am I wrong in my thought?
No, you're not wrong in your thought. And I can jump in and say that on inspections on projects is something we express is extremely important to prevent stuff like this from happening. As an example, the Beardsley Sanitary Sewer Project that is taking place, we're actually working with VNK to have them watch over the construction. Even though it's not our project, we're taking an added step of precaution to do some inspections, even with it not being our project. Wayne, you may have other thoughts. Robin, you as well?
I'm just saying that I think as far as my involvement on that project, I did learn that I think coming in for me, and at that time I was the assistant director, but just learning what the differences are between having the city engineer on contract and then also having a different engineering firm, that I do need to utilize our city engineer as well as the engineer on the project to make sure that everything is correct. I think unfortunately that one might have been a little confusing for me because the engineer on the project is the same as our city engineer. So I will apologize on that one for.
And I'm not looking to lay blame. I just want to make sure that we kind of have this figured out. So in the future, I thought that even in the last couple of years, we had addressed this not specific situation, but this kind of situation, and had worked maybe some of the terms of the contract with V&K. And so I'm not assigning blame. I'm I'm just trying to make sure that we have learned and we have something in place in the future. So that, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in the city, and part of the reason I thought we had a city engineer was to oversee things. And I've expressed in the past concerns about having a city engineer who also might be an engineer on projects, and how that conflicts. But I'm not saying that about this project. I'm just saying in general, I want to make sure we're considering and addressing this issue.
You know, I wonder if we get into a set of circumstances where the city engineer is a participant, you know, as one of the contract, if we shouldn't provide a safeguard for ourselves by bringing in a outside engineer for that specific project as a way to resolve that. But
Well, that's a whole nother discussion. I mean, that's what I thought we were doing. And so if that's where we're going, then we need to have a whole nother discussion about what our expectations are for a city engineer, right? And I know this is a developing issue. We've talked about it in the past. You know, do we employ a city engineer? Do we continue to have specialized contracts? I know it's just an ongoing issue, but I just think at some point we need to have this conversation, because I expect this issue is going to come up again, and it's come up in the past.
I have witnessed since this project came up, and not necessarily because of this project, though, there has been discussion. There's been new contract with V&K, a lot of discussions on how city engineers utilize, and I guess I've seen in department head meetings and everything where there's been more emphasis that we want to make sure that getting the city engineer involved and asking the right questions. I think a lot of it does have to do with experience and just growing pains with the city, and recognizing that, you know, the park and rec director probably shouldn't be supervising construction projects, except from the 1,000 foot level, making sure the engineer is following through and the contractor's following through with dates. But I have seen a lot of discussion on that, and I do think it's been firmed up, and processes are a lot better than they were 2 years ago. Certainly, there's always going to be room for improvement, and we're going to see reasons for improvement, I would expect.
Thank you, Jim. That's what I was trying to get somebody to tell me.
Okay.
I am with you, Jackie. I thought that we had agreed that we would have a construction project engineer hired, somebody to inspect. At one point it was, I know one particular project it came in to make sure that the curbs were being poured appropriately and the street was the appropriate thickness, because nobody had been supervising that. We were just taking other engineers' words. So I'm with you. I thought that we were doing that, but I guess we're not.
Yeah, and Stephanie, we are doing that. I mean, we're involved in essentially every project the city has go on, every subdivision. We're inspecting everything. We're monitoring all the testing, everything, inspecting the improvements, doing walkthroughs at the end of those, and confirming and providing the council, a written report at the end of those projects, that all that infrastructure is, meets the specifications and the plans and everything. So this is just, the best I could explain, it's a project that kind of was ahead of all that. That was initiated with the Parks Department. I know Nancy at the time was struggling with budget, trying to get a lot of things done for, with a very limited budget. And so, I mean, it's something I think that's been a learning experience for us, but I can say that we're involved, in essentially every other project that's going on in the city, and I can certainly, anytime anybody has any question about anything else happening, I can certainly give you a summary of the status of those projects and what's going on and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think we've learned a lot from this, and we just want to try to put this behind us and get it resolved.
Well, thank you for everybody who was involved in pursuing it and finding a resolution.
Do we have any public comment? Hearing none, can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second,
Okay, got a motion, a second. Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Lester,
Yes.
Baker,
Yes.
Reba,
Yes.
Cool,
yes.
Livingston.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 8I is the second reading of an ordinance amending the legacy PUD within the city of Norwalk, Iowa by allowing R2 uses and parcel 1 R4 uses in parcel 2 and refining the area of parcel 4. So we passed the first reading of this ordinance at our last meeting. This deals with how Hubble will finish out the legacy circle and the open area to the east of the circle. Luke, do you have anything to add?
No, I do not.
All right, any discussion or question from council? Public comment?
Mayor, if I may, just chime in real quick. There is an email attached in your packet about someone that had expressed opposition to this project. And then David Lester had sent an email just shortly before this meeting to me from, I'm sorry, I'm looking at who it's from.
Don Darnell.
Don Darnell, expressing opposition from himself, and states in the email, 45 residents is what his email states that are in opposition of the rezoning. I know the public comments over, like as far as public hearing, but I just wanted to let you guys know.
And
Yeah.
Lindsay, just so I can understand, he says, are there 45 signatures? Does he attach 45 names and addresses? He just says 45 people resist.
Yeah, I can
Okay.
read you that. Do you want me to read the email?
No,
Sure.
I just wanted to either way, I just want a clarification on that.
Okay.
I wouldn't mind. I didn't, did you send the
didn't see
email
it.
to us?
No, I got it from David Lester. I think it's the
I
only.
received it this morning and I didn't get it to Lindsay soon enough, so.
Okay, I would like to know what it says.
Okay,
Yes.
it
Yeah.
says from Don Darnell, it says, just to be sure, in case this decision is still in play, I want to tell you how much the 45 residents of the townhomes at the Legacy do not want to see the circle rezoned so that an apartment building can be built within the circle. It is not what we were promised as we decided to make our home here. It will be a huge negative for many reasons that are, for the most part, obvious. Please get behind us and oppose this change to the plan that we were promised as this area of town was being developed. Please let me know what the current status is so we can know what our avenues are to stop this from happening in our neighborhood. Thanks, Dawn.
And what were they promised? They were promised by the developer something?
No idea. I don't know. I asked and I didn't get an answer to that one. I did tell him that Hubble could technically put an apartment building there already today under its current zoning. It would just have to have commercial in it as well.
Right.
So the only part they seem opposed to is the apartments. This is the circle of houses that have, or townhomes that are all together that back up to the apartment building and the Legacy or the golf course entrance there.
Okay. And he also needs to understand that this isn't a normal market rate apartment. It's senior apartments.
I shared Steve Mosley's phone number with him today, so hopefully he'll give Steve a call.
Okay.
You know, if it's zoned R4 as apartments, the intent, I believe, that was said at the last meeting is that this was to be condos. I understand that if it's R4, they can put an apartment there. I would hope that it's condos. I don't even know that it has to be senior condos. I think that condos is a great ownership option that doesn't exist in Norwalk right now. It fills a price point and a need. And I would hope that it is a condominium of some sort.
Yeah.
So it's, I mean, a condominium, well, okay. It could be an apartment, yes.
Owner occupied is what my understanding is their intent.
Yes.
Age
that's the-
control, owner occupied.
Yes.
Right.
This is Steve Mosley from Hubble Realty, if I could address council.
Sure.
Yes. Like I said, Steve Mosley, Hubble Realty, 6900 Westtown Parkway, West Des Moines, Iowa. We are currently, trying to get this through and get it approved so that we can work on the plan. So the intent is to go forward with an owner-occupied condo building. That has been the full intent. We just can't move forward with design plans if we're designing something that's not allowed. And so that's why we are looking forward to getting this approved so we can keep moving forward with those plans.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. Anything else from council?
But just one thing I'd like, maybe the public to consider too, is that years ago when this all started as a conceptual idea, the city had pretty much discussed with the developer that we would locate City Hall up there to kind of be a center draw for the development of the commercial area. And for a lot of different reasons, some of them very good, I'm sure, we decided to stay in the existing building and renovate it. So that was a dynamic that the city contributed to a little bit, maybe make it more challenging to be successful with the development of that area.
Mm-hmm.
So people should keep that in mind as they're looking at, what's happening there. I think the senior condos is a good idea for the use of that area. And I like age control, but I don't know how you do it because I've been trying to control that for years. But no, I do. Sir, all seriousness aside, though, I think that's a good way to use that area.
Yeah. Okay. Any other public comment? Any final comment or from council? Or does anybody want to make a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All right. I got a motion and a second. Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Reva,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester.
Yes.
All right. Motion carries.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks, Steve. Item 8J is the second reading of an ordinance adopting a new Chapter 27 Stormwater Advisory Committee and repealing Chapter 25 Municipal Utilities Advisory Commission of the Norwalk Municipal Code. So we passed the first reading of this ordinance at our last meeting. So this is going to disband the Utilities Advisory Committee and create a Stormwater Advisory Committee. Wayne, anything to add?
No, sir.
All right. Any discussion, questions from council? Or any public comment? Hearing none, can I get a motion?
Motion.
Motion. Second.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Lindsay, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Reva,
Yes.
Cool,
Yes.
Livingston,
Yes.
Lester,
Yes.
and Baker.
Yes.
All right, motion carries. Item 9, council inquiries and staff updates. Luke Nelson.
The only thing that I have is to let you know that I continue to be involved with the Central Iowa Water Trail, the creation of that governance board and what that looks like. And I anticipate, Mayor, I'll probably ask you about doing a work session here in the near future to give a little bit more update to council. Also, Mayor, specifically, you and the other mayors in the metro are going to be invited to one of our future meetings. But I just want to kind of keep it on your radar. I know I brought that up before. And even though Norwalk is, we don't have any specific projects that are part of the water trails right now, I do believe that there is some potential with North River, that we may have some future potential for recreation. Plus, I have to say that this is just such a huge asset for the whole metro. The development of this water trail and some of the amenities it's going to bring, it's truly an asset for all of us.
Yeah.
And also, the last thing I'll bring up is I haven't had too many questions or comments about our project management spreadsheet. And I'm guessing some of you are thinking, well, Luke, you haven't sent that out to us. So I'm going to send that out again here in the near future so you can enjoy some fun reading.
Oh, boy.
I was just going to ask about that.
I
I've been
can
waiting for that, Luke.
see the excitement. Thanks, Mayor. That's all I have.
Okay, Brian,
Nothing.
Stephanie?
Well, I was just going to say that the MPO meeting today, we talked about a water trails update. And Luke, I just forwarded you a bunch of PDFs that were shared with the progress and the drawings so far made on the 4 different projects. It's a $34 million project so far. And the MPO signed off, the policy committee signed off on those preliminary plans. That's it.
Cool. Thank you. Lindsay?
Nothing, thank you.
All righty. Robin?
Well, I just want to say that Tony updated me today that seating was put down at Mackinac parking lot. So that project stayed on track really well. So it's looking really nice out there, and we'll be ready to go for next season. Don't have anything else. Thanks, guys.
Great, thank you. Jean Bosch? Or did she drop off?
No.
Nope, she's there.
Good evening. I just wanted to do a quick update to mention that we have returned to curbside only services, but we have implemented some by appointment only to try to serve the needs of the folks who need a little extra assistance. And so we have computer use by appointment, as well as notary, faxing, printing, and scanning. And our patrons have really appreciated that, especially the notary services have been getting used quite a bit. So that's it for me.
All right, thanks, Jean. Holly?
Yep, just still moving along really well with all the different projects with the sports campus. That's going really well, and they're working on getting estimates now for the facilities and the construction of the project. We may request having a work session with council on this as we get a little bit closer, just to make sure everybody's kind of on the same page before we go into the development agreement draft. Culvers, that's still also moving forward pretty well. We did some site visits the other day, and I think they're pretty close. They're down to maybe about 2 sites that they are really interested in. And then Cobblestone Hotel, that's also moving along well. They've turned in an updated grading and site plan. They're just waiting on a soils report, and then they'll also be able to turn in their estimate so we can plug into the development agreement. So things are going pretty well there.
Awesome. Thank you. Jean Kelly?
Right, just one quick thing to mention. We are going through CIP items, and as always, there's a ton of projects, and so we're trying to narrow down what we can afford, and the Finance Committee will meet in 2.5 weeks, and we'll go through that. That's all I have. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Chief Staples?
Just Cops with Carts is December 2nd. Stephanie has issued a challenge to all employees, city employees, to raise $500, and she will match. We plan to make sure she has to match. And Fairway has informed us that they are closing at 7 p.m. starting next week due to COVID, and therefore our normal time of 5 to 8 p.m. for Cops with Carts is adjusted to 5 to 7 p.m. So if you plan on coming out, don't wait till 7:30 because we won't be there. That's all I got.
All right, thank you. Chief Coburn?
Yeah, all I have is that we're putting together our Santa event. There'll be some more to come about that as far as dates and times, but we are planning on Santa visiting Norwalk in the very near future, and like we always do each year. So aside from that, I don't think I have anything else.
Cool. Thank you. Wayne?
Hello, everyone. As Gene mentioned, we've been working on programming the CIP and getting our road projects in. Some of you missed it a few weeks ago. I had an agenda item. I think we had a couple of council members gone, but I just wanted to bring up the main point from that again. The MPO was using our street data, and they've estimated we need to spend about $2.25 million per year to maintain our current street condition. Right now, we're spending about $1.5 million per year, and that's just maintaining our roads. That doesn't include the projects, widening or traffic signals or some of the safety improvements. So there's quite an investment necessary for our streets, and you're going to see that reflected in the CIP. There's quite a bit in there. One plug I'm going to put in there for that, though, is once we fix up the roads, it can lead to a completely renovated neighborhood. We saw on Lakewood Drive, for example, after we did the road, the LVA did the seawall, they rebuilt a gazebo. I've seen a number of homes out there doing new siding and improving it. People like to invest in their property when they see other people investing in the neighborhood. So it can lead to it gets a good return on the investment there. So you'll see that coming forward. Speaking of roads, we were notified yesterday from the Asphalt the Paving Association of Iowa that we're going to get an award for our work in asphalt. An employee of the association lives in Norwalk, and he's seen the work we've been doing. He encouraged us to apply, and Tony Belizzi did on our behalf. They've been the engineers working on a lot of our asphalt projects, and we were awarded from them, so that was exciting. B&K has been doing a good job with that. And then touching on Christmas, like the other department said, we started setting up today to decorate the tree at Main Street. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you. Tony.
Just want to thank the city for opportunity to be involved in that West North Avenue project that the city got an award from the Asphalt Paving Association. Certainly turned out to be a nice project, and it's great to see the city recognized by the association for that project. And then, the McInich parking lot, Robin gave it a great update on that. That project is just about wrapped up and completed. So looks real nice, really pleased with how that parking lot turned out. So it'll be opened up to the public very soon here. So that's all I've got.
Great. Thank you. Luke Paris.
I just wanted to mention, we talked a while back about a pilot project for doing some assistance in helping rehab some homes and stuff. And so we are working on having a policy to you all in a coming meeting. So
good.
That's all I've got.
Thanks. Ed?
Yeah, just a couple things. First, I was wondering what an asphalt award looked like.
I'll get you a picture of it when we get it.
All right, I'd like to see that. I'm kind of curious. We had our meeting of the Metro Waste Board last night, and we're moving along further with the new recycling center, and that looks like it's shaping up pretty good. And we'll see a few things happening up there in the near future. Also, I just wanted to share with the mayor and the council, I had submitted a West Des Moines ordinance that dealt with solar panels to the staff and ask if they might take a look through that and see if they had different suggestions or thoughts. And I would just ask that the rest of the council think about whether or not they think that's worthy of a discussion at a later point. And in that regard, we might have an opportunity there to take a look at maybe windmills, wind generators as a part of that discussion before we have one coming up out of the ground somewhere.
Yeah.
With that, that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Ed, I think that windmills are already covered in our zoning ordinance, are they not?
Yes,
Luke?
that's correct. We actually, interestingly enough, had nothing on solar, but actually do have a relatively extensive thing on wind generators.
Yeah, because I remember spending a lot of time on that.
Well, good. All right. We're ahead of the game on wind.
There you
We're
go.
halfway there.
Jackie.
Nothing.
Okay, David.
I just want to thank Luke Parrish for sending the link to the planning and zoning meeting from last week. I would encourage you to share with them. I think it was Councilman Cool that said why we weren't agreeing with their decision. You said it very well at the last meeting. I think it was you. And also one of their folks, one of their folks said that we should be listening to staff. And I would encourage them to listen to staff as well, because they voted 7-0 twice in that same meeting against staff recommendations. So I was just a little confused after listening to it, and I just want to publicly say that because none of them are on, and none of them seem to listen to our meetings because they didn't have a clue that we had discussed the fact that they had voted against everything last time, and I was a little frustrated with that, and I just wanted to express that publicly. and make sure. I've tried to reach out to a few of them and haven't heard back from them, and it's not quite so easy to reach out to them as their information is not available publicly. So I just wanted to express that publicly on the council meeting. So thank you.
Well, if I could comment too, I hope moving forward, there's an opportunity to try to get folks more closely on the same sheet of music going forward on different things. So we have a better mutual understanding. That could be a large part of it too.
Yeah, so before I get to Jim, I'd like to kind of address that a little bit. So Monday night is the next P&Z meeting. Jim and I are going to attend. I'm going to attend to just let P&Z know how much we appreciate their work and their effort and the thoughtfulness that they take. But that there are factors that council gets to weigh that they don't get to weigh, and because of that, sometimes council is going to I don't want to say rule, but pass something that they have said that they don't think we should do, as with the Hubble development. So and so Jim and I are going to go to that, and then we're going to go, and Jim's going to explain explain why we should probably get motions out of P&Z. There are times on council that we will not move something forward, and we won't have a motion on an item. But with P&Z being a recommendation commission, they pretty much need to make some sort of a recommendation for each item. Am I getting that right, Jim?
Yes.
So I think Jim and I are just going to show up just to kind of let them know why they had to have a motion, because I think some of them didn't think they needed a motion, and to be real honest with you, I didn't think they needed a motion either. So I've been educated on that as well, and understand that. So we need to let them know, but they also need to know that, you know, myself, council appreciate their efforts, that they, you know, and their consideration of items that come up to them, and that we do appreciate that. We do listen to it. We do recognize that when things are not passed by them, but and the implication of us taking that and then passing it and going against them. So just to address that, David.
Thank you.
I appreciate that, Mayor.
Yeah.
You guys doing that. That'll be good.
Yeah, it will be a good thing.
All right, Jim.
Nope, I don't have anything else.
Okay. And then I have to apologize. You know, I told you, it's probably a month and a half ago, that I was going to get Luke's review forms out to you, and I have totally spaced that off. So I will try to get that to you next week sometime. You can do it during Thanksgiving, watching football Thanksgiving afternoon, since your families won't be with you. Well, maybe they will.
Give us an opportunity to really focus too.
Yeah, there you go.
I already made note his lack of a tie.
Yeah, okay. That'd be good. And that's all I have for tonight. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I got it. Well, I'll take one of those as a motion, the other one as a second. All those in favor, aye.
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 All those opposed, same. We're adjourned at 7:41 p.m. Thank you and stay safe.
All right, good
Yeah.
night.
See ya.
Thank you.